Health is more than just an in-range blood count, a normal mammogram, or a negative colonoscopy. True health means being fully present in our day-to-day lives, feeling strong, seen, and valued. It is an overarching state of being that can be volatile and demanding, at times robust, and at others utterly failing. What does health look like for you? How do you define it? Do you view health strictly as physical well-being, or are emotional and social states part of your picture? Finally, what behaviors do you rely on to maintain your health, and are they actually working for you? Welcome to Gyno Curious. I'm your host and creator, Dr. Amy Novat, a board-certified OBGYN. From both sides of the speculum, we're here to investigate what it means to be a healer and to be healed. Please follow and share the show wherever you listen to your podcast. So I'm thrilled to welcome Jen Butler to the show today. Jen is a best-selling author, speaker, and life and fitness coach. Her debut memoir, Mom, Rediscovered My Midlife Breakup with Drinking and Diet Culture, hit #1 on Amazon in 2025. She holds a BA from Brown University and an MBA from the University of Cambridge. Welcome, Jen.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you so much for having me on your show. I'm very excited for our conversation.
And me too. So, Jen, how would you define health?
So this is such a wonderful question, and I think something that everyone should take time to think about. My definition of health has certainly changed and evolved over the years. I initially, back in, my 20s, 30s, early motherhood days, would have said, well, physical health, that's important. And I have been fortunate enough to always have great physical health. I get clean bills of health when I go to see my doctor. However, what I've realized over the years is that it is equally important to care for our mental health. And that's something that I have learned to prioritize. I've learned to take a much more holistic view of my health. So I would say it's physical, it's mental, and it's emotional. The relationships we have in our lives, the way that we process our emotions, therapy, it's all of it. It's all of it.
Yeah, it's quite global. And you alluded to kind of my second point, which was how we think about our bodies and well-being evolves, right?
Yes.
And changes not only as we age, but as we take on new roles and responsibilities.
That's for sure.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask you how mothering changed the way you thought about your own health in contrast to the way you focused on the health of your kids and your partner and the family unit.
Wow, what a great question. So, I will say that when I was pregnant for the first time, I was very connected to my body. It took us 15 months to get pregnant. We were this close, and I'm pinching my fingers, to doing IUI, intrauterine insemination. I was this close to taking Clomid, and I said to my husband, I really just need another month. I'm just not ready. And then we actually got pregnant naturally, which was wonderful. So during those 15 months of trying to conceive, that was such a struggle. And it was awful in many ways, really hard. But as soon as I became pregnant, I felt so connected to my body. And then I had my baby, and all of a sudden I felt like I was living in a body that was just like some stretched out, exhausted, bloated alien. Like I did not know what was going on. And then, of course, I had this baby to take care of. So really all of my focus was on her and making sure she survived every single day, because apparently that's what happens when you have a child. You have to make sure that they live. So I went from this feeling
That
of
breathing thing.
Oh my God. I mean, really, the nerve. So, I went from really with the flip of a switch, over my 21 hours of labor, from feeling utterly connected to my body to completely foreign in my own body and entirely focused on my baby. And that disconnect from my body really continued as I went into motherhood. As I got pregnant again, I think, again, I enjoyed that feeling of connection to my body, but I had a toddler to take care of. So I never really fully recovered that connection that I had so cherished to my own body. And it took me a really long time. I'm proud to say I'm back there now, but I'm
Yay.
45. So it took a while. It took a while.
Yeah. How old are your kids now?
They are 14 and 12.
Aha. Thanks.
Yes.
So I want us to talk about your book. Again, it's called Mom Rediscovered. Before we go into it, I want to just say to the audience, my experience with this book is it's not just about being a mother.
Hmm.
This is about the defining roles, whether it's as a partner, as a CEO, as a,
A daughter.
I don't know, a daughter. That's right.
Friend. Yep.
Exactly. That all these roles that tend to define us in our daily
Yes.
lives. So we're not just speaking to those out there who have chosen to have a parenting role. I guess the first question is, what inspired you to write this book?
Well, I have always wanted to write a book. I started journaling when I was in middle school. I'm an only child of divorced parents, and my journals really were such a comfort to me over the years. I would journal every night starting in middle school. So it just became a lifelong dream to write a book, to someday be holding my book in my hands. I just
Mm,
didn't know what the heck it would be. I wanted to write some sort of memoir once I learned what memoir was, because by journaling, I was always telling my own story. And that's what I wanted to do. But I really didn't know what story I had to tell until I started on my journey of quitting drinking, which then led to quitting diet culture and all the other good stuff that has kind of come as a result of that. And so that's why I decided to write the book. The other reason is that when I started my own personal development journey, which again for me started with taking breaks from drinking alcohol, other women's stories were absolutely instrumental in my process and in my journey. I loved reading memoirs written by not celebrities. I loved reading the real stories written by real people. And I really wanted to add my own story to that genre.
I'm so reminded how when I started Gyno Curious, it was all about telling women's stories and
Hmm.
that the sharing of my own stories, hearing other women reveal their storylines and their narratives is so instructional. And
Yes,
moreover, not only do we learn about what's going on with others, but so often it's a way of reassuring us that we're not alone.
100%.
And
Yep.
there's something particularly true, at least in my parenting experience, where I often felt really quite alone.
Hmm.
And particularly as a working mom, Jen, I live in a small town, and it was very confusing at times to be a clinician in a small town of women who were often very schismed around who stayed at home and who worked. And
Yes,
I never quite understood it because those of us who worked wanted to be at home. And I often heard from the women who were home that they wish they were out more.
exactly.
So it
Exactly.
was a very sad state of affairs,
Yes.
it was very much true that I couldn't quite find my way in that social morass.
Hmm.
And now, of course, on Gyno Curious, as women share their stories about parenting or about illness or about sex, whatever it is,
Hmm.
I hope that those who are listening are reassured that we're all just trying to figure this stuff out
Yes.
and that
Yes.
it's not so clear. Yeah.
Yes. My book actually opens with my friend giving me a poster of something she had said to me on a walk that she and I took together. And the first two lines of the poster read, "Everyone has their shit, no one has it all together." And that's it, right? I mean, it's so easy to
There you
just
go.
assume that everybody else has their shit together. Why am I the only one that doesn't? And that was the mindset that I was caught in for a long time. And I love podcasts like yours. I think it's so important to share real stories so that people realize not only am I not alone, but none of us actually know what we're doing. Nobody has their shit
That's
together.
right. That's right.
Yeah.
And you know what the beauty of aging is as you've heard before, I'm sure, is I'm learning more and more what I don't know. And it's
Yes.
great. It's
It's so
great.
great.
It just allows me to be really curious. It allows me
Yes.
to be humble. It allows me to look around and say, oh, I have an opportunity to learn something. I'm going to learn something today. And I
Yes.
love that. I really love that.
Yes. And I think the more space you create for curiosity, the less room you have for judgment.
Yeah.
I just think curiosity replaces judgment, and that's just such a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I totally agree. So in your work, you use this statement, quote, best mom never.
Yes.
Can we talk about that descriptive?
Sure. That is the title of my Substack. I use it in my book as well and talked about how I had always strived to be the best mom ever, but I kind of fell so far and was putting so much pressure on myself to be perfect and to, have energy and be performing in all these ways that I only ever felt like the best mom ever. And yeah, but now I've kind of embraced that and I use that as the title of my Substack to really emphasize I will never be the best mom ever. However, I am the best mom to my kids. And that is something that I have really grown into. And I really feel 100% I am the best mom for them. But I am not a perfect mom. I never have been. I never will be. And that is okay. I am proud to be the best mom never.
And, my kids are a whole lot older than yours. And what I'm really loving about my adult children are the conversations that we have about what I did right and
Mm.
what I did wrong. And
Wow.
and the capacity to talk about particularly those, if you will, wrong moments and how they were perceived by my son, my daughter,
Wow.
and me. And, there's this whole school of psychology called phenomenology, which is about how family members will remember one event completely differently from one another.
Yes. Yes.
So I like Best Mom Never because it is, of course, mom being cradled by best and never. And so you can kind of put parentheses around each word at different
Yes.
times. So I really liked it.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, there's so much fucking pressure for women to be the best moms, to be the
Yep.
perfect moms. And even if we intellectually know it's impossible because we're not perfect human beings, we're kind of
Hmm.
perfectly imperfect.
Hmm.
Why, why do we think this is true? And do you think there's a corollary for dads? Do they have this, do they have the same pressure?
Short answer to that is no. Oh, what a great question. Oh, I think this is all very complex, right? Because
Indeed.
we all were raised a different way. We all were wired differently in our own families. We all are taking different messages from different sources. So some people are on social media, some aren't. Some are getting it from movies and TV, some might not be. And it also depends on where you live and your local community. I happen to live in a community where there are many, many, many beautiful women who look like they have it all together and for whom appearances are very important. And that's just all, it's all a real mind fuck, really, if if you don't mind me using that term.
No,
Um,
not at all.
I just think there's so much pressure on women to show up in so many different ways in a way that there is not on dads. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. And I have I usually say, particularly to my daughter, just because we can doesn't mean we should,
Yeah.
because I remind her that she is enormously capable, and as are most women I know in my life.
Hmm.
And it seems like with age that the women in my life are beginning to say, I'm going to say no. I'm going to
Oh,
create boundaries. I'm not going to be defined by whether my children are perfect or my job is perfect
yes.
or all the roles that us women take on. Again, as we prefaced earlier, whether it's mother, sister, daughter, friend, wife, lover,
Hmm.
mother, all these roles that, gosh, we just hold on to in our resume that sure they define us, but to a point.
Yes.
So I guess I'd ask us to talk a little bit about what are the strategies you learned in your journey in terms of saying no, I mean, you talked a little bit, you alluded to alcohol and to the
Mhm,
diet culture. So why don't we dive in there?
mhm,
Like,
mhm.
how did you create some boundaries there? How did you learn to say no? And how did you, there's a lot of questions here, so bear with me. How did you allow yourself to love yourself in the face of saying, fuck no, I
Yeah.
am going to be perfectly imperfect?
Yep. It took a long time. It took several
Yeah.
years of dedicated work on myself and really
Mm-hmm.
prioritizing that. And even that alone was hard to do, right? Because that meant I had a little less bandwidth for my kids. I had a little less bandwidth for my partner because I was doing this work on myself. And even kind of taking that initial stand, saying, I am going to prioritize this was a huge leap for me, an absolutely huge leap. I started with the drinking because that was my most pressing issue. I like to say I had a lowercase p problem with alcohol, not an uppercase P problem. I am not sure if you're familiar with the term gray area drinking. Some of your listeners may be, some may not be. So,
What is that?
so gray area drinking refers to, if you think about alcohol use as a spectrum, gray area drinking is the murky middle between a kind of full-blown capital P problem that requires professional help and being able to take it or leave it and just having a completely uncomplicated relationship with alcohol. You can drink it, you cannot drink it, it's not a thing. In the middle is a big gray area where it is a thing to some degree. And even within that, there's many, many shades of gray. So, my gray area might have started out kind of silver, but then by the end, it was like charcoal. I was really struggling to go for more than a day without drinking. The clock would strike 5 p.m. and I would be heading to my wine fridge to pour my wine. And alcohol, when alcohol is very trustworthy, it always does its job. It works, it's a little more efficient with some people than others, but I really believe that if given the chance, alcohol will always succeed at making the drinker more reliant on it. And that is exactly what happened with me. So, what started with a glass of wine once in a while, turned into a glass of wine every night, turned into multiple glasses of wine every night, etc. And so that to me was something very concrete that I could identify as a problem in my life. I was waking up groggy. I started having hangovers that were so bad that my kids were around 6 and 4 when I was starting to go through this. And they would notice my hangovers. They'd be like, oh, mama, like you don't smell good, or like, oh, and that just was, oh my gosh, cringe to the max. And I also felt like it was affecting my moods. I was short tempered. I obviously had low energy. It really was impacting every area of my life. So, really, it got to the point where I just was tired of my own bullshit. I was tired of alcohol, as I say in my book, alcohol wearing the leggings in our relationship. I really wanted to take my power back. And so once I started taking breaks from drinking, I never planned to stop drinking. I just wanted to regain control. But eventually I took enough breaks that I actually started being more excited about taking a break from drinking than going back to drinking. And that
Mm.
was a switch that for me was everything. I mean, it really felt magical. Like, did I actually create this where, I used to not be able to go for more than a day without drinking. And now I actually don't want to drink? Like, that felt amazing, still feels amazing. And so I stopped drinking and I thought all my problems were solved. I thought that was my problem. I thought, okay, I don't drink anymore. So everything is going to be great. And that could not have been farther from the truth. In fact, once I removed alcohol from my life, I was able to look at everything else, look at the everything else I was doing and the ways that I was showing up. And then I realized, oh, that's why I drank. Because actually, I've lost my purpose. I've completely let go of any professional identity. I've given up all financial agency in my relationship. I don't know what I want to do with my life. I'm a slave to diet culture and Weight Watchers, and I still don't feel happy in my body, like all these things. And that all felt very overwhelming initially, but I just kept going. I just, said, okay, well, I'm really tired of trying to make my body smaller. So let me deal with that. I'm really tired of spending $200 to dye my hair, so let me stop dyeing my hair. I'm really tired of giving myself such a hard time about cooking fresh meals every night, so maybe I just don't do that anymore. So quitting drinking was sort of the first real boundary I set for myself. Saying no to alcohol was the first time I really used that word as a complete sentence. But that opened up my capability to do that in these other areas of my life where I really wasn't showing up the way I wanted to.
So, Jen, what you're describing is kind of a quote from your book, this unraveling and rebuilding in the
Hmm.
midlife.
Hmm.
And so often, what happens when we reveal one behavior that we've embraced doggedly in our lives, and I don't
Hmm.
care whether it's drinking or going to the gym at 6 a.m.
Hmm.
or saying I'm going to be the perfect mom, or health to me means taking 30 vitamins a day. Whenever we get just so determined, we get kind of blinded by that, right?
Yes, yes,
So I love this concept of kind of the vision, like the clouds parted for you when you gave
yes.
up drinking. And it allowed you to examine your life in a much more, well, perhaps in a more open, honest way,
Those were
right?
the two words I was about to use. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And what I'm hearing from you, which I'm so curious about, I hear faith in your
Mm.
voice. I hear that you maybe weren't completely aware of it, but that there was a trust that once you made this decision about alcohol, that
Mhm.
there was an opportunity, an agency
Yes,
in you around all these other things. And,
yes.
to our listeners, I'm sure you still got shit to deal with because we all do,
Oh,
right?
I sure do. Yep.
Yeah. But what you're sharing with us, and thank you for your vulnerability and your honesty around this, is that your health was being impacted by a lot of different things. Your capacity to be present with your children,
Hmm.
without smelling bad,
Hmm.
depended upon a lot of things, not just about alcohol. And what I want our listeners to think about, particularly after we're done, is okay, so what are the tendrils in my life that I think are getting knotted, that I think are getting in my way, that are keeping me from being not only healthy, but my genuine self as best as
Yes,
possible? What
yes.
would you say to all that?
Uh, I would say it sounds like you're in my brain. Everything that you said is spot on with regard to my journey. And I think one thing that is so important to me about sharing my story, one of the reasons why I wrote this book is that I think, our individual details of our lives are our own, but our stories are universal. And I think so many women struggle with self-trust that has kind of disappeared along the way, maybe, because of motherhood or because you went into a career that was super intense and just kind of lost touch with yourself. I majored in archaeology, so you have to just deal with my archaeological metaphors here. But
I love
having to
excavations.
excavate down to our, emotional bedrock and think like, okay, I made it all the way down here. I got rid of alcohol. I stopped dieting, and I'm down here now. Who the heck am I? And like, what do I want to do and where do I want to go?
Mm.
And that is an exciting place to be. It's also a very tender place to be. And it can take a really long time to dig down there. And it can be a very humbling experience when you realize how many coping mechanisms you've been using, how long you've been doing these things. I mean, I started using a Weight Watchers tracker when I was 12.
Wow.
And yeah. And
Wow.
so, that's how long I had been trying to fit my body into some sort of arbitrary shape instead of just getting down to my bedrock and thinking, why don't I just let my body show up in whatever shape it is and do that healing work? So, yeah, so I think that's the process. And then once you make it down to that bedrock, that's where you can start rebuilding self-trust. And you can do that by practicing positive self beliefs, practicing saying things to yourself like, I am enough, I am capable. I mean, I literally wrote these things on Post-its and stuck them behind my desk. And once you really tend to those self beliefs, they really do take root down there and they grow, and you start to embrace your capability and your enoughness.
Yeah. And I want to remind our listeners, this is a scary process. Because
Yes.
not only does it expose our genuine self and our attributes, hopefully, but it also exposes some of the stuff we don't want to live with anymore.
Yep.
And that can sometimes be our relationships. That can be the way we're having sex. That could be about the way we're in our jobs. It could be
Hmm.
about that so-called best friend is no longer providing a loving, reciprocal relationship with me. And
Yes.
so I've got to let go of that person after 30 years of being in relationship.
Yep.
So there's so many aspects of this excavation
Hmm.
that get revealed that, yeah, are hard. They're glorious and challenging. There's a lot of loss. And there are a lot of people who just really are afraid to go there.
Yep.
So I guess I would say to anyone listening, remember, you don't have to do it all at once.
Oh,
That
no,
Jen,
definitely not.
yeah, that Jen is describing, years of doing this and work, and it sounds like you got help with this. And, whether it's a therapist, whether it's AA, whether it's
Yep.
your best friend, so to speak, finding resources. And I'm often talking, I'm kind of curious about what is your support system?
Yes.
Who are the folks that you can be most vulnerable with? Who is the person who you can communicate your fears with, because
Hmm.
chances are when we communicate our fears, one, it feels great to finally say them out loud.
Oh, it sure does.
Yeah.
Name it
And
to tame
two,
it.
exactly. So again, this is not easy stuff, but
Yep.
this is the healing, the health work that I wanted us to tap into today. And listen, alcohol is such a challenging part of our social world. And
Hmm.
I had a conversation with somebody who was actually a wine supplier, made wine on
Hmm.
Gyno Curious. And it was a very interesting and challenging conversation because I think ritual in our life, I don't think, I know ritual in our life is really important.
Yes.
I know socializing is an incredibly important metric in our overall well-being. I mean, that's
Yes.
science, right?
Exactly.
And we live in a world where alcohol is a social lubricant. It
Yep.
is it is offered most places we go. So how do folks who are in this gray area drinking or who are really having a capital P problem
Hmm.
live in the world if everybody else is able to take it or leave it, but you're not?
So that's a great question. It's something that people ask me all the time. Coaching clients ask me this question all the time. It's something that I asked myself and asked other people that I talked to at the start of my journey. How am I going to go to Thanksgiving with my family where we all used to drink tons of wine and play board games and not drink the wine? All that kind of stuff. And the realization that I came to is that eventually, with enough breaks and enough practice of not drinking, I ultimately got to a point where I simply did not like the way alcohol made me feel. I didn't like that it made me feel groggy, disconnected from myself, not 100% engaged and present. Some people may never get to that point, and that's also okay. But for those who are wondering, who are curious, who think that they might have a lowercase p problem, if not a capital P problem with alcohol, what I want to say is you will be fine. I initially felt super awkward doing anything social without alcohol, even date nights with my husband. The first few date nights when I was taking a break from drinking were challenging for me. I felt really weird. I felt like an oyster out of the shell, just like quivering, like, ugh, very exposed, raw, vulnerable. But there's little tips and tricks and tools that you can use. You decide what you're going to drink and you order it automatically when you get there. You visualize yourself having fun instead of having a miserable time, and that will position your brain to get you in the mood to have fun. So there's lots of little tips and tricks like that that I used all the time until I didn't have to use them anymore, because now I can just go out and order a club soda with lime and I truly do not care. It is not a thing for me anymore. That being said, do I enjoy going to events where I know everyone's going to be drinking heavily? I no. I'll go and maybe stay for a little while and then I'll leave, or maybe sometimes I don't go at all. But what I've learned in the process is I also never really had fun at events like that. I just joined in,
Touche.
but actually, I don't enjoy events like that. I would rather be home on the couch watching a movie with my kids, or I would rather be out to dinner with one really good friend, having that. So it's also just about learning who you really are before you kind of succumb to this social programming and the kind of life you actually want to have and the kind of social life you want to have. But it is 100% possible to have fun without drinking.
Yeah. You know what I love about most really great restaurants these days is that on their alcohol list, they now have mocktails.
Yes.
You know, they're making a real effort. And so
Yep.
you get it in this gorgeous glass. It comes with garnish. There are ways in which there's also in a way of concealing that you're not having alcohol if
Hmm.
there's some discomfort associated with that. And
Exactly.
you have I love this, you have BYOB, build your own break. And this is part of
Yes.
your consulting work. And I just thought that was great,
Yes, that's my
to
30-day
take off it.
program. Yep.
Yeah. So I guess I want to just talk about, well, I guess I want to talk about the thin culture
Hmm.
because
Oof.
women for far, 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 far too long, maybe forever. Although there have been points in human life where being fuller bodied was a sign of wealth and a sign of
Yes.
health and totally sexualized and, adored.
Yep.
But we're living in a world right now where being thin is aspirational.
Yes, we sure are.
Can we talk about how you help your clients think about this and what you would say to those listening who really struggle with this issue?
Yeah. So I would say my body image issues, not to put it all on my parents, but we can do that, right? So my parents split up when I was 4. My mom is 5'7". She's in a very average, kind of normal sized body. And my dad left her for a thin, petite, gorgeous woman. And I got that memo. I got them, and I write about this in my book. I got the memo that if you want to be chosen, you need to be small and pretty. And I never felt pretty enough, and I never felt small enough. And those feelings just kind of festered and grew throughout my life. And there were times where I felt, confident. I was in my early 20s. I'm running 30 miles a week around Central Park. And also, I'm in my 20s, right? So my metabolism's incredible. So I felt pretty good in my body at that point. But even then, I never felt small enough. I just never did. I just always thought I had to be focusing on getting smaller, that I should always be smaller. Especially now, I am very proud to show up in the world in well, I was almost about to drop the number that I weigh, but I'm not going to, only because I don't want people comparing. But what I will say is, I was literally about to say how much I weigh because I really don't care. It's like not a thing for me anymore. I don't attach any judgment to it at all. I also teach fitness classes in a studio in my town. And it is not only something that well, I should say, when I first started teaching there, I was really nervous about being up at the front of the room in tight workout clothes in front of all these women. Many of the women in my town are very small, and I am not. And I got very nervous about that. And now, as skinny culture only seems to be coming back with more and more of a vengeance, not only do I feel more comfortable being up at the front of that room because of the work that I've done on myself and just in establishing kind of body peace in my own body, but I also actually think it's very important for me to be at the front of the room in my sports bra and leggings, to do a move where we're sitting on the floor, pressing the weights over our head and the skin of my belly is hanging out over my leggings. I think that's really important. I mean, it took me a lifetime to get to this point. It really did. And I was using Weight Watchers up until my early 40s. But it was what I call a misadventure with a nutritionist that really was the final straw for me. And that was that I worked with someone who basically put me on a starvation diet and I
Oh,
followed it to a T. It was at the start of COVID, which just was coincidental, but I followed the program to a T, even though I felt lightheaded all the time. I felt hungry all the time. 2 months into the 3 month program, my period stopped and I kept going because I thought, well, I'm finally going to do it. I'm finally going to be thin. I'm finally going to get to the body that I want to be in. But it was so torturous that that really was the last straw for me. So as much as I'm embarrassed that I even committed to something so crazy, I'm also glad that I did because I needed to see what it actually took to get that small so that I could be like, fuck that, never doing that again. Instead of focusing on being small, why don't I focus on just having my body just being focused on being strong and being just neutral about my body. I don't have to love my body, but let me not waste energy hating my body anymore either. Now it's a lot easier for people to get thin. And that concerns me because I think it's exacerbating everybody's body image issues. I honestly am so grateful that I did all the work that I've done before these drugs have come along and become so prevalent because I can't tell you that I wouldn't have tried them. But I know that I feel much better focusing on strength, on listening to my body, eating what I want to eat when I want to eat it, and just dressing in clothes that make me feel comfortable and knowing that I'm not going to love my body every day. And that's okay. But I'm also not going to hate my body ever. And that feels great.
Yeah, yeah, well said, well said. Yeah, the use of these weight loss medications is very alarming to me.
Yep.
And particularly when I have women who are already slim walking
Yes.
into my office saying,
Yes.
I think I should take these drugs. And I have to keep myself from shaking my head and saying, are you crazy? Because they're just swept up. They're just
Yep.
swept up by this madness. And the madness is just very loud. It's very,
Yes.
very loud. And, I'm grateful that these medications exist. They're helping certain folks a great
For
deal.
sure. Yes.
So I'm not throwing the baby out with the bathwater, so to
Totally agree.
speak,
Yep.
but it is just reinforcing this cultural belief, particularly, well, actually, I know men and women who are using these drugs,
Hmm.
that everybody has to be a certain BMI and weight. And unfortunately, these meds can deplete your health, not promote it.
Exactly. Exactly.
Um,
Exactly. And that's why I
so
focus on lifting heavy weights and explaining when I'm teaching my classes, actually explaining to these women why it's so important that we do this and why it's important that we try to get stronger and stronger. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And it's as you're describing, when we seek this level of thinness, it's a never-ending story.
Yes.
And you also use the words empowering women to become unstuck, unshrunk, and
Hmm.
unapologetic.
Hmm.
And so I kind of want to wrap up with that, how you think about unstuck, unshrunk, and unapologetic.
Hmm. Those are my three new favorite words. So the unstuck piece is what we talked about, I think, for most of this conversation, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Alcohol kept me stuck for sure. I was stuck in my gray area drinking habit. And the only way that I was able to get unstuck was by reaching out and asking for help and connecting with other people. And we haven't talked about that today, but it is in my book actually opens with the moment that I reach out for help to a group of anonymous women online who call themselves the Sober Sisters. That connection point. That was how I started the process of getting unstuck. And breaking up with alcohol made me realize all the other areas where I was stuck. I was stuck in negative body image, stuck in having no professional purpose, etc. But it is, as you said before, it's like a domino effect. So once you can unstick yourself from one spot or maybe the spot where you feel the most stuck, that gets you into more of a virtuous cycle of like, oh, well, if I did that, if I stopped drinking, of course I can figure out how to feel okay with my body, and of course I can figure out what to do with my life, and it starts to spiral in a good way, spiral up instead of down. Unshrunk is the body image piece, but it can also pertain to other areas. So I have a tattoo on my arm that says take up space, and I
Love
put
it.
it there as a reminder because that doesn't just mean physically. So when I say unshrunk, I don't just mean living in your body in the shape that it takes, the shape that it's meant to be, But I also mean, are you feeling shrunk in your career? Do you need to take up more space professionally? Do you need to take up more space intellectually? Do you need to read a book about a topic to like help your brain? Looking at areas of your life where you have been playing it small and making the decision to take up more space, to use your voice, to be a little louder, to be a little bigger. That's the unshrunk piece. And, the unapologetic piece, it's just owning your shit and just being yourself. And it can be exhausting though, Amy. I can't tell you how many times I go into my therapist's office and just cry because I'm like, it is so hard to show up in the world as myself and to not shrink away, to not put on any armor, to just like be out here as me. It is so hard, but it's so worth it. I would never want to go back. And I want to just show up, in my sports bra and leggings at the front of the class and just be there out loud, being exactly who I am unapologetically.
Thank you. I love seeing you at the front of that room with your mama belly over your leggings because
Yep.
anyone who's had a baby knows that excess skin.
Yep.
And and then any of us who are moving in this midlife and beyond. I was looking at my arms the other day and I'm like, whoa, what happened to them? They used to be kind of fit and now they're not so fit.
Yep. Yep.
Even though I do what I'm supposed to be doing, and that there's
Yep.
a certain reality to not just the physical gravity of our world, that's keeping us
Hmm.
feet on the ground, but the gravity of our lives. And that
Yes.
there's so many demands. Again, whether you're trying to be the perfect mom or the perfect CEO or the perfect podcaster or the perfect whatever, that there are going to be days where you slam it. You're just
Yes.
good. And then there are days where you just are not.
Yes.
And
Absolutely.
and that part of the ride, is just knowing that it's a ride, knowing that
Yes.
it's up and down and all around. And that, yeah, there are days where you walk into your therapist and you just cry about the whole thing. And then there are other days where you're like, I'm not sure what I have to talk about today. Things are
Yeah,
kind of
or I'll
good.
come in and be like, I'm crushing it. Let me tell you all the ways in which I'm crushing it, right? Exactly. And the only way through is through. Like there's,
Yeah,
you can take the escape hatches, but where does that get you? It doesn't get you anywhere, but you move through it and you realize, oh, I can endure the tough shit. And then the good shit is so much better.
right, right. Those, as I tell my kids, life is punctuated by joys,
Oh, I love
and the
that.
rest of it is hard. It just is. So I was reminded because you're a fitness instructor, I think you might relate to this. I don't, I'm sure most of those who are listening have been to a gym one or twice,
Hmm.
and that you go to an exercise class that let's just say it's Pilates, and you've never done Pilates before, but you've been reassured anyone of any expertise, beginner, middle, expert could come and you're there and they're doing some exercise that you're like, oh my God, they're talking about doing 30 reps and I can't even do two.
Yep. Yep.
That you do the two or you do the one, and then the next time you go, it's maybe two, and then it's
Yes.
four, and then it's six. And that's the beauty of kind of sticking to it, right?
Yes.
And
100%.
and and giving yourself a break and knowing that again, that
Just meeting
change
yourself
is a
where you
fun.
are.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's been the theme of so many conversations on Gyno Curious of
Oh,
just
I love it.
accepting, kind of where you are here in the moment
Hmm.
today and
Hmm.
tomorrow and knowing that it can change. Yeah.
Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah. Jen, tell everyone, remind them about the name of your book and how they learn about you, please.
Yes. So my book is called Mom Rediscovered: My Midlife Breakup with Drinking and Diet Culture. It's available in hardcover and paperback at your favorite e-tailer, wherever you order your books, and at certain little independent bookstores around the country. However, I also have my audiobook coming out July 1st, which is very exciting. What I love about
Wonderful.
this is that I will be completely honest and tell you that at the start of my journey, I never would have bought a book with my title. I would see it in the store and be like, my midlife breakup with drinking and diet culture. Gosh, that's exactly what I need to do, but there's no way I can buy this book because no one can see me reading a book like this. So I recorded the audiobook. And I'm really excited for that to come out because I think, people who are not quite ready to own their own story can just put my story in their ears. No one has to know that they're listening to it. And hopefully that will help them realize they're not alone and they can maybe start on their journey. So that is coming out this summer. Very excited for that. All the information about my book and my audiobook is at my book website, which is momrediscoveredbook.com. And then all the information more about me, my other writing, my coaching is all at jenbutlerwrites.com, which is also my Instagram handle.
Wonderful, wonderful. I love to end Gyno Curious with a question.
Mm-hmm.
And that question is, if you would kindly share with us one thing that gives you great pleasure.
I love this question so much. One thing that gives me great pleasure, I have to go back to my fitness classes. I teach a class on Sunday mornings. And these days, it almost always fills. Sometimes there's a wait list. And it feels almost like church, like we are all there to put in the work, but also just to be together and to support each other. I never plan what comes out of my mouth, but for some reason in that class, whatever comes out of my mouth feels so completely authentic and true. And I feel like I'm really inspiring everybody. And so I look forward to that class every week. It feels like the most magical moment of women coming together and lifting each other up.
Jen and I are going to travel down to your gym.
Yeah.
I'm going to get that information as soon as we're
I
off
hope
here.
so.
Which gym is this? So if women are listening,
Sure. Yeah, it's called The Collective by Jab Fit. It's in Chappaqua, New York. The Instagram handle is Jab Fit Studios. And yeah, I teach there 9 classes a week. So I'm always there. And it's a wonderful, we are really building a wonderful, authentic community of women who just want to show up for themselves and for each other.
It's great. Well, the description just speaks to what we touched on earlier. It sounds like this is a place where your genuine self, your genuine
Yes.
body, mind, body, and spirit are all
Yes.
there in the most authentic fashion. So yeah, there's very few things that give us such pleasure as
Yes.
that trifecta.
That kind of alignment, right? It feels really good. It feels really, really
Right.
good. So thank you for asking me to share that.
My pleasure speaking to you. Thank you for joining us
This
today.
has been wonderful. It was so nice to meet you. Thank you so much, Amy.
It's my great honor and pleasure. I also want to thank Jen Hammoud and Matty Rosenberg, my co-producers. I want to thank David Hoffman, my editor. And I want to thank the Epicurean here in Rhiniecliff, New York, this just wonderful, beautiful store that sells delicious goods. And I want to thank you, those who are listening. Please stay well. Listen to your instincts and intuitions. They are the greatest of teachers, not to be ignored.